Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence, we go up to all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, May the 10th, 2023, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan. On How the Frack We Got Here, we do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before we get started, guys, let you know that even though we are a news podcast, we try to do our best to give you the unbridled news as best we can. And also, we do try to watch our language, but sometimes words do fly. At the same time, there might be things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers. So viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So, how do we start this? I'm trying to figure out how do we start this wonderful midweek. Well, there's one way, and again, I did not have this on my bingo card of 2023, that Santos may have had possibly the shortest political career of anyone in politics.
Of the ability for me to address and defend myself. We have an indictment. We have the information that the government wants to come after me on, and I'm going to comply. I've been complying throughout this entire process. I have no desire not to comply at this point. They've been gracious in there. Now I'm going to have to go and fight to defend myself. The reality is it's a witch hunt, because it makes no sense that in 4 months, 5 months, I'm indicted. You have Joe Biden's entire family receiving deposits from nine family members receiving money from foreign destinations into their bank accounts. It's been years of exposing. A lot of you here have reported on them, and yet no investigation is launched into them. I'm gonna fight. I'm getting back to that. I'm gonna fight my battle. I'm gonna deliver. I'm going to fight the witch hunt. I'm going to take care of clearing my name, and I look forward to doing that. Now, hold on.
What do you say to that?
I would like the opportunity for some of you guys to ask some questions in an orderly fashion, and we'll start right here. Go ahead, Rachel.
Why would you apply for unemployment benefits when you had a job making $120,000 a year?
Rachel, this is part of my defense. This is inaccurate information. And I will get to clear my name on this. During the pandemic, it wasn't very clear. I don't understand where the government's getting their information, but I will present my facts.
Prosecutors say that you got over $20,000 in unemployment benefits, sir. How is that acceptable?
Ma'am, like I said, my employment was changed during the time. I don't understand where the government's coming from. I'll present my defense.
And one last follow-up.
I gave you two. Go ahead.
What evidence do you have that they don't have?
Because
it's extensive.
I have plenty of evidence that we will now be sharing with the government in this case to make sure that I can defend my innocence.
Okay, let's just stop right there, because number one, let's just go that part. If you don't know who that is maybe former Representative George Santos. For all those that don't remember, he was the guy that, was Jewish, but didn't really know, went to school they said he didn't go to, started a business which he didn't have, took money that really was intended to swindle people. He did swindle people with that funding because he was doing it for a quote unquote veteran. But either way, as you can see there, guys, he's talking. He has been indicted. Now, let's go over this for a second. 7 counts of wire fraud, 3 counts of money laundering, 2 counts of false statements to the House, and 1 count of theft of public funds. Sir, you're about to have the shortest political career in history, because that's all outside of theft of public funds. Wire fraud and money laundering, that's federal. That's just that is, kiss whatever political landscapes you have goodbye. But it is amazing how he says, I look to clear my name with evidence. And the reporters come out and say, well, you took unemployment when you had a $120,000 job. Well, I don't know where the government's getting that information from. Your employment. And I just love the fact of how he says, why out of all this time are they investigating me? Why out of all this time, now all of a sudden that, we could be looking at Biden, we could be looking at his entire family. I said, oh dear God, is it the Trump playbook? It's the Trump playbook. It is literally the Trump playbook. It is, let me take all the heat off myself and hope that you guys who watch Fox News are going to agree with everything I say and turn right back on Biden and his family. No, George Santos, I mean, give the man props. He faked it till he made it, till he got to as a representative. But we kept asking. He goes, well, actually, I'm sorry. It got to the point where we didn't ask anymore, was demanding that the GOP do something. Kevin McCarthy, again, the Speaker of the House, had all the time in the world to excommunicate him from the House. He had all the time and all the ability. But let's be honest, the GOP need every vote they can get. Even though they may not have the Senate, they have the House. And every vote is crucial. And you think for 1 second, what does Kevin McCarthy do? Oh, we're going to leave that to the Ethics Committee. Yeah, you shouldn't have done that, because now the Ethics Committee has came back and said, oh, well, these are all the problems we see. So now what? So it is amazing to me that, with all that being said, unless George Santos, DeSantos, which again, I don't see a lot writing in his future that can exonerate him of 13 charges, especially with wire fraud and money laundering. That's usually cancel Christmas. That's just being honest. But, to the would-be fake it till you make it representative, who's probably about to be excommunicated, good luck. And also begins a special election for his seat, because trust me, I don't see him getting out of this. Speaking of things that are not getting out of this, well, at least for right now, one of Trump's cases have been decided. And quite frankly, I'm surprised it was actually, well, not that it took very long, that it was deliberated rather quickly.
Overwhelmed with joy.
Writer E. Jean Carroll reacting to the jury's quick verdict in her case against former President Trump.
This is not about the money. This is about getting my name back.
Carroll sat down with Savannah Guthrie for her first television interview after the jury found Mr. Trump sexually abused her in a department store decades ago, though the jury stopped short of finding he raped her.
There was a concept of the perfect victim. The perfect victim always screams, always reports to the police. And yesterday we demolished that old concept.
Mr. Trump's lawyer, Joe Tacopina, has vowed to appeal while his client is on a social media tear.
It's a disgrace. I don't even know who this woman is.
What would you want to say to him now?
I said it to Joe Tacopina yesterday. He came over to congratulate me. He put out his hand and I said, he did it and you know it.
The civil verdict carries no jail time, but the political fallout more complicated, as some 2024 presidential hopefuls refuse to address it.
That's something for Trump to respond to.
So I've been pretty busy.
Former Vice President Pence appearing dismissive of the case in an exclusive interview with NBC's Dasha Burns.
I just don't think it's where the American people are focused.
Others striking a different tone.
Do the Americans believe that the allegations are true? Probably most of them do, just like the jury did. Some will excuse it. I don't believe it's excusable and defensible.
Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie said to still be mulling a White House bid, going even further.
His response yesterday to me was ridiculous, that he didn't even know the woman. Why do we keep making excuses? And why don't we listen to his own words?
And Laura joining me. We've heard new information now about one of the jurors in the case.
Yes, Lester, Carroll's legal team actually tried to get someone kicked off that jury after learning he listened to a far-right podcast. This all coming out tonight in an unsealed court filing, but turns out the judge kept him on the case. And as we know, their verdict was unanimous against Mr. Trump.
All right, Laura, thank you for that.
So, yes, at this point, well, let's be honest, it's Trump, former failure in chief, who does nothing more than litigate and push back and litigate and push back and appeal and litigate and push back and appeal and litigate until he can no longer do it. Well, in this case, he's going, well, we already know because civil case and not a federal case, it does not disbar him from being a presidential candidate. That's the one caveat out of this that kind of is like, well, damn, if he was convicted, then he couldn't qualify. He can qualify to be a candidate in 2024, which he still believes he firmly is. Now, keep in mind, that was a civil case. There are plenty of federal cases that Trump is still attached to. The documents that he took from the White House and refused to give back for the longest time. Let's not forget the federal case that's dealing in Manhattan right now with falsifying property values and tax evasion. Let's not also forget he is still enthralled within Georgia with those voter polls. Let's not also forget we could keep going down the list. This man is involved in so many lawsuits. It's by far staggering. In all of these, outside of this one we just got through, outside of this one, they're all federal, which means that if he's convicted in any one of these cases, goodbye 2024 run. Although at this point, it is a moral victory that yes, she did get her day in court. Will they appeal it? Absolutely. However, if appeal court refuses to take the case, then the original charges stick, and Trump will be seen as a sexual predator. Well, on paper, we already know he's a sexual predator because previous comments have let us know that he has no problem talking about a woman in such a way that you would think that he's basically brooding dogs. Again, not surprised. But what is surprising, though, and again, just to switch gears for a second, Supreme Court justices and just judges altogether, because we talked about Clarence Thomas and we're seeing revelations of him being with GOP donors with big pockets, taking international trips, staying on their yachts. They're maybe purchasing homes for the justices' parents, things of that nature. And yet this was all pointed at Clarence Thomas. And of course, GOP and justices refused to talk about it. Especially Chief Justice Roberts, which I'm surprised because we hold the Supreme Court as the highest court in the land, which means that they should be at the highest point of morality and ethics. However, at this point, when you are a judge whose decisions could impact millions of lives, really, when your literal ruling can change the way how people's lives are, you should be held to a standard. Even so much more that not only should there be an ethical review of the Supreme Court, but like this Democratic lawmaker did, which I thought was pretty cool, he sat there and put a bill in that would end so-called judge shopping. Now, if you never heard of judge shopping, or you watched any of your favorite legal shows, if you watch any of your favorite legal shows, I'm talking Boston Legal, I'm talking The Practice, I am talking about any of those shows or police shows where they always sit there and say, we need to go to a judge. We need to go to a favorable judge. And of course, when you hear that, you just immediately go, okay. And of course, they always go to the judge that either gives them the warrant, gives them the subpoena, what have you. As much as it happens in television, it also happens in real life, that Republicans and Democrats may do judge shopping. Well, this is the bill that they actually put in that would actually keep that from happening. It's just that any bill, of course, right now is direct towards civil lawsuits seeking a court order that would apply nationwide would be filed in a judicial district where there are 2 or more active judges assigned to hear cases. Which you think? That's great. Reason being because you can't shop for a judge. Say, for instance, and I say, for instance, that let's say that your case is in Tennessee. Let's use home state Tennessee as an example. Your case is heard in Tennessee, which means that for the longest time, you have to find a judge in Tennessee if that law passes. You would think that's pretty cool, right? Well, sometimes the cases get moved out of state, where other favorable judges, depending on who you talk to, may actually turn around and say, hey, judge, we need you to rule on this. That's what the law is supposed to do. Which again, I'm not against that. We need to stop judge shopping. All judges are supposed to be fair and balanced. I know it's weird to say that, but again, look at the Supreme Court. Mostly conservative views and maybe some that are progressive or liberal. And yet we've seen what happens when an overly conservative Supreme Court is in control. Imagine that if it applied to all judges. We would look like Florida. really and truly. But speaking of Florida, they are definitely in the news tonight for several reasons. Again, this is why I sit there and say Florida is going to be the king of the Hold My Beer championships. Because they keep winning every year, because they keep outdoing everybody. What I mean by that is Florida, of course, with Ron DeSantis. Now, keep in mind, dictator Governor Ron DeSantis, who again took on Disney, failed because Disney knows paperwork. He tried to take on LGBTQ plus and somehow got his "Don't Say Gay" bill passed, which again is completely stupid. He also took on African American studies, specifically African American AP history, which he says included LGBTQ plus motives and included that it may be possible indoctrination, and got an entire school system to remove it just because he feels bad. That also being said, he has also gotten textbooks that have mentioned social justice, taking a knee, and other content of concern to be removed. I wish I could make this up. They literally, at this point, have rejected 35% of social studies textbooks that were submitted by publishers for approval, including those that reference social justice and other information that was not aligned with Florida law. Regarding K-12 social studies instruction materials, 66 out of 101 submitted materials were approved and met state standards for every grade level. But when those submitted materials were initially reviewed, only 19 out of 101 were approved. The rest because of inaccurate material, errors, and other information that was not aligned with Florida law. Although what they mentioned about that was removing a paragraph about how parents should talk with their children about the national anthem, explaining taking a knee to protest police brutality for grades K through 5, removing a section about social justice and the Black Lives Matter movement for grades 6 through 8, changing social justice issues to key principles when discussing what it is in the Hebrew Bible for grades 6 through 8. Changing a reference to socialist economy that said they may promote greater equality while still providing a fully functioning government supervised economy to planned economies that have slow dependent and fewer technological advances because they move slowly around planning and approval while limiting human incentive for grades 6 through 8. Now, as crazy as that is, you would think that number one, people who have, first off, never taught a class, does not have a degree or experience in education, has never been a curriculum planner for any grade or high school or grade school or elementary school. You would think that these people are unqualified to do anything else that would basically mess with kids' public education. And yet, at the same time, in Florida, you can't learn about Black history, LGBTQ, Black Lives Matter, and my personal favorite, other religions beside Christianity. But again, why are we surprised? It's Florida, right? You know, Florida always believes in the fact of, as Ron DeSantis, this is where woke goes to die. Well, you would think that DeSantis, he couldn't get any lower than that, right? I mean, he took on Black people history. He took on the LGBTQ plus folks. Surely he will not try to do anything else that harms or damages the state, right? Like I said, when it comes to DeSantis in Florida, hold my beer.
Reaction this week to a sweeping immigration bill passed by the Florida legislature this week. Governor Ron DeSantis, who proposed some of the provisions in this bill, is expected to sign it into law. We met with one of the people here in Miami whose life will be directly impacted by the changes to this immigration policy in the state of Florida. Take a listen.
El mejor cafecito.
No doubt.
35-year-old Julio Calderon is an entrepreneur who calls Miami home.
Y buenas barberías and good barbershops.
Sona Barbershop in Little Havana is where Julio has been getting his shave and a haircut for years. He graduated from Florida International University with a degree in economics. And now he's using that degree to help small businesses, like this Miami bakery, where he helped increase their online presence.
I recommend the pequeños. They also have one that has cheese and one that has guava.
But all of this could soon change now that the Florida legislature passed a new immigration bill that will have a direct impact on the estimated 775,000 undocumented immigrants who live in Florida. People like Julio. Julio came here from Honduras right after he turned 16. He didn't qualify for DACA.
The fear of deportation. It's real. I can give more to this country. Right? And I want to give more.
The legislation would impose harsher penalties for transporting undocumented immigrants into Florida, invalidate driver's licenses given to people who can't prove their legal status, prohibit undocumented migrants from becoming certified lawyers, require employers with more than 25 employees to use E-Verify, allocate $12 million in the next fiscal year to send migrants out of Florida, and require hospitals that accept Medicaid to ask admitted patients for their immigration status and report that data to the state.
How would your life change if this immigration-related bill takes effect here?
There is a higher risk. I looked at the things that I needed to change in my life, taking more public transportation, being more careful about the places that I go to, and I'm already implementing those things.
Julio says that one way the bill would impact him is that he would have to be more careful about seeking medical care, avoiding hospitals that will be required to report his status to the state. The bill's sponsor, Republican State Senator Blaise Ingloglia, said the bill is meant to, quote, counter the mounting border crisis and make Florida the model for the nation on how to safeguard its residents. For Julio, it's his faith that fuels his hope for the future.
I wake up every day with one thing: to serve others, and I pray every day, and I know that my life will continue. I'm not going to stop myself on that fear or put all my energy and attention into that when I can go out and help build the type of community that I want to build.
So again, that's just one. Now, again, if you haven't heard, that's the immigration bill they're trying to pass, where a lot of it is, number one, if you are an immigrant, yes, now because it's passed in Florida, it can be pushed on you. Say if you're undocumented, you go to a hospital, they have to ask for your immigrant status now. Or if you work on the job, or if you have a job that has more than 25 people, they have to use E-Verify to basically validate who the employees are. Now, again, for all those that are wondering, well, why is this such a big deal? Again, remember I just said it's Florida, where Florida has a large number of immigrants there. Now, again, I said this before, when you F around and find out, you find out very quickly. And in this case, for Florida, which, by the way, has a large community of immigrants who now are in fear of even going to work or even going to the hospital, things of that nature, I wonder how that affects their economy and businesses.
And many times they do work that others may not want to do or are able to do. But a new immigration crackdown by the Florida legislature and Governor Ron DeSantis is now making it harder for them to live and work in the state.
And even though the policy is not yet in effect, CBS News Miami's Gabriela Arzola shows us how it has already shaken the undocumented community along with employers they work for.
A recent survey from the Migration Policy Institute says there are around 800,000 undocumented immigrants right here in the state of Florida, many taking jobs like construction and agriculture, but that may not be for long.
Around South Florida, labor workers are becoming more and more scarce by the day, according to some employees.
People aren't showing up to work because they're scared of being deported.
And critics say Senate Bill 1718 is to blame.
None on the desk, Mr. Speaker.
According to the bill, businesses could face up to a $10,000 fine per undocumented employee, and the state could revoke their license. For construction workers like Jose, he says half of the workers are already gone.
Many workers are leaving thinking they're going to be deported, so they're going to other states.
The bill also includes hospitals. Each facility that accepts Medicaid has to submit that person's immigration status. According to the Florida governor's website, taxpayers paid more than $226 million in health care costs for undocumented migrants last year. Now, working migrants like Juan say they're being threatened daily.
We are being treated like delinquents. They talk about ICE and police, and everything here is just really uncomfortable right now.
With the tens of thousands of migrants coming through the Texas border, Governor DeSantis says this bill should deter illegal immigrants from coming to Florida. But for those that are already here, like Maria, she says she'll stay, pray, and continue to work to help her family in hopes that she won't be deported.
Working hard to help my family seems impossible, but I just have to pray to God that everything works out.
The bill still needs to be signed by the governor, but once that happens, this law will take effect July 1st. I'm Gabrielle Arzola, CBS News, Miami.
That's crazy, isn't it? That it is amazing how Ron DeSantis kind of forgets. And I say kind of forgets because, number one, immigrants, and again, nothing wrong with it. I think we're supposed to, number one, we're supposed to be a nation of immigrants. We're supposed to be a land of immigrants. The only ones that are truly natives here are Native Americans. I mean, that's how it should be. At the same time, it's not like we're running out of space. I mean, have you seen some state populations lately? It's not like we're crowded. At the same time, what is the fear? Because these immigrants do jobs, specifically manual labor jobs, that Americans don't want to do. And I find it amazing when they say, well, the immigrants are taking your jobs. Okay, well, who's going to do construction? Who's going to do the drill? Who's going to do the landscaping? Who's going to do the gardening? Who's going to do the number of things that these immigrants do? Because they take the work that nobody else wants to take, and they do it happily because it keeps them paid and keeps them fed. But let's be honest, that's not the real. I mean, the whole fear of taking your jobs thing has never been the problem for the bleached variety of the group, the unseasoned mayo, as I like to call them, because the fear is, as I said before, we're a nation of immigrants. So, and as immigrants come over, generations do occur. And then the landscape changes. And then when you realize for the longest time that your place in the food chain is slowly being moved to the bottom, fear sets in. Why does fear set in? For no reason. Because you think that those with larger numbers will probably do the same thing that you've done to others while you benefited from them? Sounds like a fear to me. Sounds like a lot of unseasoned mayo fear. But DeSantis believes he's doing everything right. And I said before, at this point, DeSantis is going to F around and find out when businesses, and if they're not already hurting, they will be, because you have told every undocumented worker in Florida that you've been put on notice and that you can be deported. So what are they doing? They're going to the states that have less restrictions, and watch what happens when they go to those states, because income and job will go up, Florida's will go down. And yet DeSantis will be saying a moral victory has happened because we have gotten rid of all the illegals in his head. Just goes to show you, he's terrible as a governor. Do you really want to imagine him as a president? Because like I said, you thought Trump was bad. Trump 2.0 is going to be worse, and we're getting previews. But moving right along, guys, I did want to get to this story as well. We did actually cover this last week of Jordan Neely, the young man who unfortunately lost his life in a New York subway by some very overzealous people. Now, again, I'm reiterating my point on this because when this first came out last week, I said it before. Yes, it was a man that was ranting and raving about, I'm starving, I want food, I don't care if I go to jail. Those were the words that some bystanders heard. But I asked the same question that I'm asking now, was that, did he threaten anyone? Was anybody's lives in danger? Because one overzealous individual with military training decided to basically put him in a chokehold and not release it, while two other people decided to also join in and bound his hands and feet, thinking that he was a danger. But yet we come to find out he wasn't. So again, the question goes, number one, what is the mayor's take on this, as well as will that Marine be charged for murder?
Jordan Neely did not deserve to die.
9 days after Jordan Neely was killed aboard an F train, Mayor Eric Adams issuing a measured response, staying away from how Neely died and the people responsible.
One of our own is dead. A black man, black like me.
The mayor's 13-minute, 46-second address focused little on the incident and more on his mental health task force and outreach teams. The city's public advocate, Jumani Williams, took a different approach.
What we all saw was someone put someone else in a chokehold for 6, 10, or 15 minutes, depending on what someone says, until they die. That is what happens.
Williams was joined by Comptroller Brad Lander and advocates for those with mental illness. He says Daniel Penny should have been arrested. The video is evidence enough.
We can't be a city where you could choke someone to death who's experiencing a mental health crisis without any consequence.
The Manhattan District Attorney's Office has been tight-lipped about the case, but says it's assigned seasoned, experienced prosecutors. Sources say there could be grand jury action this week. DA Alvin Bragg urged against reading into the silence.
I think sometimes people peer into the silence and look at that as if, well, the office isn't doing anything or it's not important. It's quite the contrary.
The mayor is summoning all homeless services providers to City Hall in response to Neely's death. Advocates say the system must change.
How many caseworkers and service coordinators did Jordan Neely have? Did he see a different face every time someone came to talk to him? How is that supportive?
Well, and again, how is that supportive? Again, I said before, because you have these situations where you see everything under a microscope, and in that same moment, there's instant judgment, instant assumption. Oh, this should never happen. This would have been differently, and things of that nature. That's how it should have been, but it's not. We did see a man who was having a mental health issue, and that instead of someone trying to talk him down, and I'm not expecting people on a bus to do that. I'm not expecting people on a subway to do that. I really am not, because I get it in this day and age. You don't know who can snap. You don't know who's carry. You don't know what type of day they're having. I get it, and I understand it fully. The problem I have with this is it's amazing how when instead someone not asking him, hey, man, what do you need? Instead of just coming up from behind and choking him because he's a quote unquote threat, because someone who was military trained, and I say this all the time, it's hard to really give you that understanding because you're military trained, you're combat trained. So you're trained to see a situation and deal with it. But at the same time, what was everyone to deal with? I mean, you already had them. It's like, for all those that know wrestling, once you get somebody in a chokehold and you apply it, it doesn't need to be put on there very long. Chokeholds basically cut off the carotid artery from the neck, which basically leads blood and oxygen to the brain. And if you cut that artery off and you hold it for a long time, passing out happens first, death happens second. And it happens very quickly in a matter of minutes. This man held on for no reason. And I ask again, is he going to be charged? Which now the Manhattan District Attorney's Office said that prosecutors have been put on place on this and said, do not read into the silence. Kind of hard to consider the fact that, an individual who decided to take another individual's life is still free and clear, while the individual whose life was taken isn't able to defend himself. Kind of hard not to read into the silence, but we press on. I never thought that beer, which you think for something that would bring certain people together. I'm not a beer drinker. I like whiskey and tequila personally, but to each his own. But you would think beer would bring people together, and Bud Light, because of a advertisement they did with a transgender person, caused a lot of unseasoned mayo would-be warriors to decide to stop drinking Bud Light, destroying Bud Light, even buy a case of it just to shoot it to prove how manly you are. Yeah. That being said, Bud Light, because of the drop in sales, has decided to change its tune a little bit, which goes to show you cannot always put faith in businesses to always do the right thing when profit is over everything.
Controversy has resulted in a boycott, with at least 5 Chicago bars eliminating Bud Light, Busch Light, and Goose Island 312 from their drink menus.
You abandoned us at the very time when we needed it the most.
Mark Robertson, the co-owner of Two Bears Tavern Group, feels Anheuser-Busch abandoned the LGBTQ plus community after the company backtracked on a partnership with transgender social media star Dylan Mulvaney.
This month, I celebrated my day 365 of womanhood, and Bud Light sent me possibly the best gift ever, a can with my face on it.
Following that video, Anheuser-Busch received backlash, resulting in a drop in sales, while rival companies' profits rose. Robertson believes the LGBTQ plus community could have used the major company's support in that moment more than ever before.
He essentially erased our entire community from being part of the America that is what Anheuser-Busch is about.
The wildly popular Sidetrack bar quickly followed suit, also tossing out Anheuser-Busch products.
Over the past 4 decades, we've really prided ourselves in working with brands that like to support the LGBTQ plus community more than just putting rainbows on cans.
In a statement released last month, Anheuser-Busch CEO Brendan Whitworth writes, "We never intended to be a part of a discussion that divides people. We are in the business of bringing people together over a beer."
We really hope that, Bud Light and Anheuser-Busch could come to the table and discuss about what they can do to show that they do support the LGBTQ plus community, because I want to believe that they do.
So yeah, it's nuts that you would think, like I said, for something that's supposed to bring people together, that some unseasoned male warriors decided that, oh, I'm not going to drink Bud Light because Bud Light supports them gays. Okay. I mean, the beer doesn't turn you gay. It's like, it's worse than drag shows. Drag shows do not indoctrinate children. Religion does, but we're not going to talk about that. But again, it's amazing that Bud Light at first stood with the LGBTQ, and then you had all these would-be social unseasoned male warriors come out, and all of a sudden be like, well, no, I'll never drink Bud Light. I'll go to Coolers. I'll go to Keystone. I'll go to Natural Light. And I'm just like, why? Even those that destroyed Bud Light and destroyed everything Bud Light related, why are you destroying your own stuff? It's worse. It's almost the same thing as when Nike supported Colin Kaepernick and you saw a whole bunch of people burning Nike jerseys, clothes, shoes. I'm like, way to be patriotic, but they've already gotten your money. You've already paid them. So you're basically destroying stuff just because, well, you want to. So, but again, this, like I said, it goes back to the company. Bud Light is only going to do, and I said, this is why I sit there and say this all the time. Do not expect corporations to be social justice warriors. There are a few exceptions out there, Ben and Jerry being one of them. Ben and Jerry's ice cream, terrific ice cream, by the way, but also very solid on whatever they say and do. That's an exception to the rule. I'll even give Nike credit, making Colin Kaepernick their spokesperson, signing him to a spokesperson contract, albeit that it did work and it did work very profitably on Nike's side. But if you're expecting a corporation to be social justice warriors, you'll be sadly mistaken. Corporations run off of money. They go after wherever the money goes, they go. And if their money gets low, the hungriness shows. At the same time, Bud Light had to backtrack and say, "Oh, well, we love everybody. We didn't think a beer would divide us. It didn't divide us." This whole thing about division, which again I always find it funny, where they say, "Well, Bud Light taking a stand divided us." No, it didn't. If you felt, and I still say this to this day, you have to feel some type of way to where if you see a can of your favorite drink and it's supporting LGBTQ and you immediately feel rage, I can only think that either A, you're seriously misguided, you're a bigot, or you're a closeted member that refuses to come out. That's the only three things it can be. Because I've seen plenty of drinks. I mean, I love Pepsi. Pepsi came out supporting LGBTQ+. Did I decide to say, I'm not going to drink Pepsi because Pepsi going to turn you gay? No, I enjoyed Pepsi. I enjoyed the fact that maybe they took a stand on this and said, we're for everybody. If your favorite player came out wearing a rainbow shirt or came out with a very positive message about how, let's just say, football is for everyone, do we immediately assume that football is going to make you gay? Do we immediately assume that the next sports drink or food is going to make you gay simply put because of rainbow flags on it? Absolutely not. So why in the blue hell would someone think that a beer or a company or a beer making company decided to come out for LGBTQ plus rights and you immediately feel some type of way because it threatens your very fragile masculinity? Sounds like a you problem and not a division problem. Putting it that way. But speaking of division, former head of the Fox News three-headed Hydra, Tucker Carlson, has decided to let people know that he is not going to go quietly into that good night. He is still going to be in some form or fashion on the waves, more specifically, social media. He's going to be on Twitter. You can't make this up.
Now, former Fox News host Tucker Carlson announcing that he is relaunching his show, but this time it will be on Twitter. Take a listen.
Starting soon, we'll be bringing a new version of the show we've been doing for the last 6.5 years to Twitter. We'll be bringing some other things too, which we'll tell you about. But for now, we're just grateful to be here. Free speech is the main right that you have. Without it, you have no others.
Well, he made that announcement in a 3-minute video posted to his account. Remember, Carlson was fired from his primetime Fox News show last month. He is reportedly giving up about $25 million to break his non-compete clause to launch this new program. We want to bring in special correspondent for Vanity Fair, Brian Stelter, who covers our industry like nobody else. Brian, first things first, what do we know about this new show that he's launching?
Right. Carlson says he's going to bring it to Twitter, which, of course, is owned by Elon Musk. And in some ways, that's a really interesting alliance. Musk was one of the last guests that Carlson had on his program before his program was canceled 2 weeks ago. We know they've been speaking in recent days. And now Carlson has this outlet, this way to put on a new version of his right-wing talk show right there on social media. But this is also Carlson's way of sending a message to Fox. A little bit of TV news nerddom for a moment. When Carlson was fired, he was basically put on the bench by Fox. He's still an employee. He's still getting paid, but he wants to negotiate his way out. Fox has been maybe taking a while to have that negotiation. Maybe Carlson was getting a little frustrated by that. So what he's doing today by announcing this new show is he's challenging Fox, defying Fox. He's basically saying, you're going to sue me for breach of contract? What are you going to do? I'm going to bring my fans to Twitter. So what we're seeing here is a deepening dispute between Carlson and Fox, and Carlson now using Twitter as leverage.
And the question is going to be, will his audience follow? Let me play something Carlson said in his announcement. Take a listen to this.
Amazingly, as of tonight, there aren't many platforms left that allow free speech. The last big one remaining in the world, the only one, is Twitter, where we are now.
Okay. Well, listen, Twitter was already under fire for misinformation, disinformation, all-out lies, anti-Semitism, racism before Elon Musk took over. And now it's gotten kind of crazy, right? Seemingly unmoored, if you will. Will anybody be able to police what Carlson says? Or is this the point? It's just a free-for-all.
I think this is the point. It is a free-for-all. It's what Elon Musk wants to provide. This move by Tucker may cement the idea of Twitter as a right-wing website, and we see some users trying to go off to other sites instead. Maybe folks who don't want to be a part of that party going off trying to launch other parties elsewhere. But Carlson, he is a prominent figure. He can bring a lot of content. What he cannot do is make $20 million a year the way he was making at Fox. Fox may owe him $25 or $30 million. Yes, he may give that up and make that money elsewhere, but that has not happened yet. To be clear, Carlson's lawyers have tonight, according to two sources, sent a letter to Fox, a shot across the bow, trying to get this going, trying to get a negotiation going to get his freedom, but he doesn't have it yet. So he can't go out there and make lots of money with Elon Musk yet. Basically, Carlson is challenging Fox at this point.
Yeah, 100%. But listen, they were hemorrhaging advertisers on Twitter before this whole thing happened. So you've got to wonder what if advertisers were already fleeing because of this, this toxic culture on Twitter, are they going to stick around now for Tucker Carlson, or will more of them come in? Because
the short answer is no. The short answer is no. Carlson was radioactive. He was a drag on Fox's profits. So I don't see how Twitter would be any different for Carlson and Musk.
Okay. So it is amazing that, number one, well, let's never say never, because I already said that Tucker Carlson's going to probably wind up on the Daily Beast or the Blaze or somewhere in Nashville, because that's where both companies are now. So I still have that on my bingo card. But he is still under contract with Fox News at this point. He is still he's still getting paid. But it's amazing how he says, well, Twitter is the one spot where there's still free speech. No, Twitter is basically the Thunderdome at 160 keys or less. So, again, I say this about Tucker Carlson. It's those people that believe what they believe for so long because it's profitable for them. It's like black conservatives. Black conservatives believe if you think a black conservative, number one, believes anything that they say, check their bank accounts. Check how much they're making. Because that'll tell you differently. Because that's what a lot of people realize. A lot of people realize, especially black people who decide to go into politics, hey, if I speak conservative, I'm basically the one black friend that every racist GOP says they have, so they're not considered racist. and so therefore it's profitable. Tucker Carlson's just basically following the same MO. For a guy that initially was on CNN, that eventually did move to Fox, made his bag. Unfortunately, he as with most prominent figures on Fox News, they get so big and full of themselves that they basically shove themselves out the door. We're only waiting for Laura Ingraham and Sean Hannity to do the same thing, and the Five. But again, I digress. Will his show take off? Possibly not, because again, what could he possibly do on Twitter that most people are already doing anyway? But we'll see. But moving along, guys, I know you probably are wondering about the debt ceiling, and the whole thing that Biden's getting involved. Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy's getting involved. Surely they found a way to make things work, right?
Between President Biden and congressional leaders yesterday, and it did not result in any breakthrough in the ongoing debt ceiling standoff.
Democrats and Republicans are trying to reach a deal to avoid a potentially crippling economic impact, but the clock is ticking with just a few weeks left before the U.S. faces the possibility of defaulting on its debts. We are joined by NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memoli, who is here in New York. Julie Sirkin is with us again as well. Mike, let's start with you. There were no cameras in the room, but we're getting a feel for what it was like. Tense sounds like perhaps an understatement. Right. Yeah. Did they make any progress at all?
Well, both sides were predicting ahead of the meeting that there wasn't likely to be a major breakthrough. Mm-hmm. And guess what? It didn't appear that there was a major breakthrough. Democrats making it clear they still want to see a so-called clean debt limit increase, no strings attached. Speaker McCarthy making it clear there needs to be some effort to rein in spending. Now, the president did talk to reporters after for quite a bit, and he made it clear who he thought the sticking point was. He said there was a good conversation among 3 of the 4 participants. He also laid out what the next plans are. Here, take a listen.
We need to take the threat of default off the table. As the meeting ended, excuse me, I suggested we continue to meet, and the leaders, our staffs continue to meet, and the leaders meet again on Friday to continue our discussions to see what progress we made.
Now, there's a real time crunch, as you know. June 1st is coming up quick, and the president has a pretty long trip planned. We're supposed to travel with him overseas to Japan and Australia next week. The president, interestingly, did not rule out the possibility that he might have to postpone that trip in order to make sure these negotiations move forward.
All right, Julie, let's bring you back in here. So this was House Speaker Kevin McCarthy's first face-to-face meeting with President Biden in months, and we know he's touted the GOP plan that passed through the House a few weeks ago, but it does include those deep spending cuts. How did McCarthy feel and say that the meeting went?
Well, you heard how Mike set it up there and what Biden said. He thought that 3 out of the 4 participants participated honestly in this meeting. Speaker McCarthy, following that, told reporters that he didn't think it went that great. They traded some jabs inside the meeting. McCarthy stood strong to his positions, demanding spending cuts before even negotiating a debt limit increase. It seemed like both sides in this meeting were pretty hamstrung in arguing their positions. Here's what Kevin McCarthy had to tell reporters afterward. Watch.
Everybody in this meeting reiterated the positions they were at. I didn't see any new movement. The president said the staff should get back together, but I was very clear with the president. We have now just 2 weeks to go.
Now, the meeting did grow tense in some key portions. There was a little bit of a back and forth whether Kevin McCarthy called the president a liar. He afterwards said he didn't. He said what the president was saying was a lie. That's when President Biden brought up what he says Republicans planned on 22% in cuts to veterans. McCarthy shot back. This is a key talking point that we've been hearing between both sides, and it's because the House Republican plan does not specify where they would cut, but it's clear that if they're not taking from veterans, that increases the amount they will have to cut from discretionary spending. So bottom line, as you heard Mike say there, no movement. Both sides will meet again on Friday. Staff are meeting in the interim, but the clock is ticking to that June 1st deadline.
So that's amazing when you think about that Kevin McCarthy, Speaker of the House, and our current president, Joe Biden, apparently can't seem to figure it out. Why are we surprised? The Republicans have already sat there and said, again, this is the debt ceiling is still, it is like the 2-step that gets played everywhere. That whenever the debt ceiling comes up, and it's amazing that the government, with again frivolous spending, especially that if you ever notice, a Republican administration overspends, a Democratic administration has to correct it by spending. At the same time, still gets criticized by the same Republican group that caused the problem in the first place. Now, again, we're going to have to spend to get out of this. We're going to that is the cold but true fact. In order to get out of this hole that America is in, it is going to have to spend. That being said, I can understand where some things need to be cut. I know it's weird, right? Me agreeing with conservatives that things need to be cut. Yes, but to certain things. I'd start with representatives and senators' salaries. Because again, if the government shuts down, why should you get paid? Your salary should be reduced to $1. Matter of fact, let's look at military spending. Now keep in mind, I said military spending. I didn't say nothing about the veterans, because we can cut military spending but increase the veteran benefits. We can, because if you haven't noticed, if you ever looked at our budget, our annual budget for a country, at least well over 35%, which I'm almost certain it's almost closer to 40% now, goes to military spending. The biggest piece of the pie goes to military spending. Keep in mind, the Pentagon, for the longest time, has yet to produce an audit to which they can account for every dollar they spend. They have failed to produce one every freaking time. On top of that, they talk about, we'll cut student loans, and of course, Republicans will cut the student loan relief. Why? Because again, it serves no other benefit except to those who actually accepted private loans. Because those like SoFi and other ones who are banking, keep in mind, when banks, this tells you how diabolical some banks are, especially when it comes to predatory lending and student loans. When they say the only reason they're against student debt loan relief is because they can no longer depend or calculate on the interest payments that comes off those loans. Understand, they said interest payments. They didn't say the loans themselves. The fact they saw the interest payments as income goes to show you how diabolical these loans are, and that a kid who is 17 or 18 years old is not going to understand what they're signing because they simply want to go to college. And that no one ever asks questions about why is college tuition going up every year? It's the same education. Why is it that college tuition is going up every year? Why is it that, most people are not even seeing the benefits? That's why if you really think about it, most jobs in the job market now don't require degrees, because a lot of these kids are sitting there thinking to themselves, do I really want to go in debt to have a degree and then not have a job that actually pays for that degree? I'd rather just find or go into business for myself and go that route. And a lot of kids, and I'll give a lot of kids credit for that. A lot of kids are figuring that out. I have no issue with that. But when it comes back to the budget, yes, the things can be cut out of that budget, but at the same time, it's what needs to be cut. I don't think that Social Security should be messed with. I don't think that student debt loan relief should be messed with. I do believe that you can cut the fat in some areas. Military spending is one of them. I do believe that you should be investing more in education in the post office. That's just me. At the same time, raise the minimum wage. If you did that alone, you would raise, like I said, raise the minimum wage to what is comparable now, because it goes with the product of the GDP and productivity in America. If we looked at what the minimum wage should be now, it should be closer to $26 to $30 an hour. Now think about that. I know a lot of people are going, but you telling me I can go to McDonald's and work $26 an hour? They do the same thing in Poland, in Germany, in Greece, and these other countries where, guess what? You can work fast food. Look at the salaries over there versus us. Whereas we're still sitting at $7.25 an hour. 2023, everything has gone up except minimum wage and your income. And those two things alone, if they were raised, could change the landscape of a lot of people. If student debt relief finally gets passed, it would change the landscape for a lot of people. If you honestly invested and started cutting the fat in areas we did not need, then yes, you would achieve it. But let's also be honest, with the debt ceiling deadline coming in 2 weeks, expect a short-term solution, and they will kick the can down the road again, which I'm going to be honest, I don't expect the debt ceiling situation to be resolved when you have a House and a Senate. when you have a Senate and a House of Representatives that are literally being held by two parties where they're each playing a game of chicken and they're using the American public basically as collateral. That's fracked up. But moving right along, I never thought I'd say this, but California can finally pave the way for something that should have happened a long time ago: reparations for Black people.
Year-old Denise Green has lived in Southern California her entire life.
This is my grandmother right here.
She knows her ancestors came from Mississippi, but much of her family history was unknown. That is until her niece started doing research.
Here's the 1880 census.
Adrienne Abiodan is a professional genealogist in Tampa, Florida, but even she spent 2 decades and thousands of dollars before uncovering the name Philip Branch.
So Philip Branch is my 4th great grandfather, and he was an enslaved person.
What was your reaction when Adrienne told you that your family is direct descendants of an enslaved person named Philip Branch?
I thought that was awesome. It was just a little overwhelming.
The vital lineage information could be valuable in California as it debates what is owed to descendants of the enslaved. Camila Moore is chair of the California Reparations Task Force, the first in the nation's statewide effort to address systemic racism against African Americans caused by the enduring legacy of slavery. Could it be something as simple as you take a cheek swab, you submit your DNA, and they go, oh, you're a descendant of an enslaved person, here's your check?
I mean, it could be. Again, this is all still a work in progress.
The task force wants eligibility to be lineage-based versus race-based. That has sparked debate.
The paper trail is not always proven to be correct.
For people who have to prove their lineage, it can be difficult, costly, and time-consuming, especially since many slaves weren't identified by name but property codes up until the 1870 census.
People think that, oh, I'm going to sit down and do my family research this weekend and get my application for reparations ready. That's not going to happen.
Over the weekend, the task force approved recommendations for reparations that could be worth up to $1.2 million for eligible applicants. Citywide reparations efforts are also underway in Boston, St. Louis, and San Francisco. Some may not support the idea because it could cost taxpayer dollars. Denise doesn't know if she'll ever get reparations, but she supports the Golden State's effort.
I'm excited for people who, will need it and can use it. But the sad part is we're getting it at the expense of what our ancestors went through.
Dana Griffin.
And yet, to a certain point, she's right. But at the same time, America definitely has a history of paying reparations back to certain groups. And of course, when it comes to paying off, and that's the one thing I've always wondered: why is it that whenever it comes to Black Americans, that when reparations gets paid, it's like, oh well, why should you weren't a slave and I'm not a slave? Well, yeah, but because of what happened to my ancestor and what your ancestor benefited from, you got a lot farther in life than I did. Example being that, again, labor rates. Like, for example, going back to Civil War, a lot of people believe the Civil War is based on slavery. That's the lie we got told. That's the lie we got told in kindergarten, grade school. Not realizing that as you got older, that it wasn't about slavery. It was basically about wages and profits. The North wanted the South to pay their slaves' wages, and the South looked at them and said, well, why do we need to pay them? They're property. That's the true nature of the Civil War, kids. That wasn't based on slavery. It was all about profit and money. That being said, fast forward to 2023, that yes, for 400 years, Black people's ancestors basically built this country. So why not reparations be paid out? Well, at the benefit of the taxpayer? Yes. Because as a taxpayer, guess what? And I always found this funny way to say, well, if I'm a taxpayer, then I have to pay for reparations for Black people. You realize that you pay for stadiums, you pay for buildings, you pay for events and things that happen in your city. You do know you pay for that, right? Just like in my city of Nashville, there's a stadium, Titan Stadium, right? That the city, or I should say the state, paid for. I think at the time it was almost, I want to say it was almost a $10 to $12 million stadium at the time. Guess what? Now that stadium can't be used anymore. And now the Tennessee Titans are saying to the city of Nashville, hey, we're going to need a brand new $1 billion stadium. And guess what? We can hold a lot more than just football games there. We want the city to pay for it. And it's amazing how myself and others are like, why do we need to pay for this? Because Nashville has had a history of paying for buildings that did not equal up to what they were supposed to be. And now you guys want to abandon one stadium and build another one just because you guys want to keep up with the times. Why is this relevant? It's relevant because for a lot of people, they'll gladly pay it. They'll gladly pay it because they believe it brings jobs. It brings this. They'll boom the economy. It's like tourism here. They love the tourism because it brings dollars. But at the same time, they don't complain about the taxes much until tax time. But yet, when it comes to reparations for Black people, and if we can prove that you did come from, and that's the big thing that they try to dispel. They try to dispel that. They try to dispel that you can prove your lineages. And I'm like, why? Because if you can prove where you came from, it's a whole lot easier to sit there and say that, yes, you do deserve reparations. I don't see the problem, except the fact that, well, in order for Black people to get reparations, that would mean that, well, America would have to sit there and acknowledge that, yes, slavery did put Black people at a disadvantage while white people got an advantage. And it would have to be said aloud. But that's the problem in American history. They never want to talk about the dark spots, only the bright, sunny spots. Tell me if I'm wrong. But some other news for you guys, we get to our feel good segment, guys. Again, I am trying to figure out, again, it's when it comes to Texas, you just can't make this up.
Criminal charges were announced against the suspect accused of plowing his SUV into a crowd of migrants, killing 8 of them and injuring 10 others. Gabe Gutierrez reports from Brownsville, Texas.
Tonight, the driver seen in this surveillance video plowing into a group of people outside a migrant shelter in Brownsville, Texas, is facing manslaughter charges.
The SUV ran a red light, lost control, flipped on its side, and struck a total of 18 individuals.
George Alvarez is now charged with 8 counts of manslaughter, 10 counts of aggravated assault, and is being held on $3.6 million bail. Police say he has an extensive criminal record and is not cooperating. Now, 8 men are dead, 10 others injured, migrants from Venezuela. That's the light police say the driver blew past. Now a makeshift memorial has sprung up right here at the bus stop. Authorities say there's not yet a clear motive here, but they haven't ruled out that this could have been intentional. ¿Qué estaba diciendo? What did he say? This man, who says he witnessed the crash, tells us the driver appeared drunk and yelled anti-immigrant profanities as he tried to flee the scene, though police have not confirmed that.
Waiting on formal toxicology reports.
The migrant deaths come as tensions ramp up here days from the lifting of the COVID border restriction known as Title 42. The change expected to bring yet another migrant influx. In just the past 72 hours, the Border Patrol chief says there have been more than 26,000 illegal border crossings. And after the White House announced 1,500 troops to the border to help with administrative tasks, today Republican Texas Governor Greg Abbott announced he was deploying a specialized task force of hundreds more National Guard members to turn back migrants.
President Biden is laying down a welcome mat to people across the entire world, saying that the United States border is wide open.
Today in Brownsville, with family members in agony, a prayer vigil for the 8 men who died and those who remain in critical condition. This man telling us they endured a grueling journey through dangerous terrain, only to die here. What have we done to deserve this, he says.
And Gabe, I understand there are some positive developments for some of the victims struck by that driver.
Yes, Lester, 3 of the migrants have just been released from the hospital, but tensions are very high in this community. Police are now investigating a report that a man brandished a weapon late today while driving past this migrant shelter.
I mean, that is crazy that whether or not you are for immigration or not, you do not have the right to take your car and use it as a weapon, which I'm surprised the man's only got manslaughter because people died. When people died, that to me is murder. If someone dies and you use the vehicle as a weapon, that, my friends, is murder. How he only got manslaughter is amazing. But Unfortunately, that's not the only story that came out of Texas, because again, for a state that loves its gun laws.
About a man who shot into crowds at a shopping mall Saturday, also killing 8. His social media postings revealing extremist views towards women, Jews, and racial minorities, and offering a glimpse into his mental health struggles. Among those killed in the mall rampage, a couple and their young child. It's where we start tonight with Morgan Chesky.
48 hours after a gunman unleashed terror at an Allen, Texas mall.
Suspect have an AR rifle.
Troubling details emerging about 33-year-old Mauricio Garcia. The shooter, investigators say, is seen in the surveillance video, stepping out of his car and opening fire on innocent shoppers, killing 8 people and wounding 7 more. Authorities say Garcia was armed with a rifle, handgun, and wearing a tactical vest, which David Ramirez says led to frightening confusion.
I thought it was a police officer.
Why?
Since all the gear he was wearing, he even had a little patch in the middle of a security or something.
One patch on Garcia's vest, used by far-right extremist groups, leading investigators to a disturbing online history on a Russian social networking site, where Garcia shared pictures of the Allen premium outlets where the attack took place. Then on April 22nd, this photo, appearing to show the 33-year-old shirtless with multiple Nazi-inspired tattoos just 2 weeks before the shooting. Hiding inside that H&M store, one employee called his dad, former police officer Stephen Spanauer.
There's been a shooting outside the store. I'm in the break room. We've got the door barricaded. I cannot get hold of 911.
Just minutes away, Spanauer pulled up to a nightmare, doing his best to give first aid to victims that, for many, was too late.
The young child was underneath one of the victims, laying on the ground.
And their parent?
They were on the ground. They were dead.
An officer at the mall on an unrelated call shot and killed the gunman, allowing police to usher hundreds that hid in fear to safety.
No dad should have to see his son walk out of a store with his hands up, past 3 bodies.
Tonight, families facing heartbreaking loss. 4th grader Daniela Mendoza and 2nd grader Sofia Mendoza lost their lives in the shooting. Their mother Ilda remaining in critical condition. Also killed the Cho family, Cindy, Q, and 3-year-old son James, leaving 6-year-old William as the family's only survivor. Ashwarya Tarikanda, a 27-year-old engineer, and 20-year-old security guard Christian Lacour.
He was such a loving guy, such a caring guy.
Tonight, the crosses, flowers, and tears we've seen before coming to Allen, a community clinging to whatever it can.
All of it so senseless. Morgan joining us now live near the crime scene. Morgan, tonight we're learning the shooter at least attempted to join the military. What do we know?
Yeah, Lester, Army officials have confirmed that Garcia did enlist in the Army back in June of 2008, but he was kicked out barely 3 months later due to an unspecified mental or physical condition. But tonight, here at the scene, hundreds are showing up to pay their respects, and 8 crosses have been erected to pay tribute to those 8 lives.
So, I don't mean to sound like a broken record. I don't. Try to avoid it, really. But for the simple fact of the matter, guys, it is one of those things where how in the world do we keep bringing the same issue? That for all those gun nuts and ammo sexuals out there that sit there and say, well, it's always the criminals that are the problem. And I have always countered back and said, it's amazing you guys keep saying criminals when it's been individuals who, by most certain standards, have access to firearms they shouldn't have. And this, again, is another prime example. An individual with mental instabilities did not make it in the Army, was able to buy weapons legally, buy gear legally, and was still able to carry out a mass shooting. All I can say to you ammo sexual and gun nuts, where's your argument now? Because my argument was, as it first stood, had we did redo our gun reform, then again, for what I said a few podcasts back, when I sat there and said, here's my rules for gun reform. Here will be my requirements for gun reform. And I said, and I labeled them out. 2 of them, one of them was a mental health screening and a physical screening. that if you're not physically able to operate a firearm, you shouldn't have one. If you are not mentally capable to operate a firearm, you shouldn't have one. And that both a doctor and a psychologist would have to give their okay on you before you can purchase one. Now imagine if those two conditions alone were implied in, well, there'd be a lot of people that wouldn't have access to firearms for good reason. You're not capable of having one or shouldn't be capable of operating one. And again, I also said there needs to be registration. Every gun should be registered. And if you have ammo or large stockpiles of ammo, or you have certain guns that, again, require more tagging, then yes, you need to be on a watch list. Well, I don't want the government knowing what I got. Well, we should by that kind of talk. If you're more worried about the government coming to get your guns, let me go ahead and be very clear about this. The government has a lot more fun stuff than your simply put Walmart bought Winchester rifle that you got 8 years ago on a clearance sale on Black Friday. That's all I'm going to sit there and say. But again, this goes back to what I said, that the laws in Texas, keep in mind, Governor Greg Abbott, this is just, we're not too far off from the Uvalde shooting. We're not that far off. And even more so that now another individual has done another shooting. All I'm going to say is at this point, what more is it going to take for a lot of people just to literally rise up and demand more from your local government? Demand more, because federal can only do so much, but states can only do so more, have people get involved. But speaking of getting involved, guys, I talked about this, and I'm thinking because again, it's our last one before we get to our feel good segment. This is becoming a growing yet scary trend that we're seeing kids. Keep in mind, when I say kids, I mean younger kids working in jobs they shouldn't really be working. You guys heard me just last month talk about how a bunch of kids were working in an animal processing facility during the graveyard shift, and that this one company has had multiple violations. So it's not their first go around, but no one's ever went to jail. They've always paid a fine. They've always had a new CEO. Now you would think this is animal processing, right? Keep in mind, Governor Huckabee Sanders has implemented a law to allow more kids to work, barring they get their parents' permission. So what is the GOP doing at this point? They are basically finding a way to allow child labor to happen without violating child labor laws. Even more so, we're finding it in places like Louisville, Kentucky, where kids, again, are working hours they shouldn't be working. And the ages of these kids working is shocking.
It's just wild. I can't believe that they actually had kids that young working something so dangerous.
It'll be a few years before Kelsey Donovan's daughter joins the workforce. When that happens, Kelsey would hate for a future employer to take advantage of the situation.
Yeah, of course you want her to know how to work hard, but you also want her to know who to work hard for.
Like many parents, Donovan was shocked to learn that 3 Kentucky-based McDonald's ownership teams face more than $212,000 in fines for violating child labor laws.
The fact that 10-year-olds were working was a bit surprising to me.
Investigators with the U.S. Department of Labor say 2 10-year-olds worked for free at a McDonald's in the Louisville area, sometimes until 2 in the morning. In all, 3 franchisees, including one based in Walton, are being penalized for allegedly letting mostly 14 and 15-year-olds work more than 3 hours on school days, which is the legal limit.
It's a lot of work to go to school, work 3 hours, and do homework.
Because of today's tight labor market, Chase College of Law professor Ken Katkin is not shocked that some businesses may try to squeeze extra work out of teenagers.
Employers definitely have business incentives to go over the line here, but law enforcement, has incentives to hold the line here, and the laws are for the protection of children.
Yeah, of course we empathize with companies trying to get labor right now. It's a difficult market right now, but definitely we don't want companies feeling that desperate so that they have to go out and get children. It's crazy.
No, we don't feel bad for businesses. Why should you feel? Wait, first and foremost, I do disagree with what she said at the end. That do we feel bad that businesses are having staffing issues? I disagree with that, because if you're a business, you can fix your own staffing issue. It's the fact that you've benefited for the longest time of the lower status quo. Like, for example, let's use McDonald's. McDonald's has just now advertised jobs starting at $15 an hour, $17 if you're a manager. They still are paying under because their CEO is raking in millions while their while the employees are still on assistance. So I don't feel bad for McDonald's. I do feel bad that they are extending the rules for 14 and 15-year-olds. Because number one, I get that you want to enter the workforce, but as 14 and 15, you're posting in school. 3 hours for most states is the max you can get. And a lot of these companies are going, nah, we can stretch that. We can be okay with that. When really you can't. It's child labor. It is illegal. It is illegal in the US to have that happen. But it is amazing that, this is what companies are doing now. Companies are doing everything that they can to get labor, to get people working for them, except raising the pay. And I said this before, we have well over 100,000 jobs available in the US right now. But the problem has always been pay. The problem has always been the rates. That if you do not pay people a livable wage, folks are going to realize that at the same time, they will find other ways of employment. They will take gig jobs. They will do Amazon Flex. They'll do Uber Eats. They'll do all these other things. Because the simple fact of the matter is, you think that your $14 or $15 an hour job is such a great thing, yet it remains open. Nobody wants to work. It's not the fact that nobody wants to work. It's the fact that nobody can work and live on under $20 an hour anymore. This is why the whole stigma of jobs and raises needs to happen. Everything has gone up statistically, but paychecks, incomes, and the minimum wage. And again, I say this, I will repeat this until it's gospel. Imagine what would happen if you did raise the minimum wage. Like I'll give a number. Let's say the minimum wage right now, if it was up to me, be $20 an hour. You know what that means? That means for the minimum wage, for the federal minimum wage, be $28 an hour. That means that every company would have to raise their wages to that same level. Think about that. If every American was making $28 an hour, and again, people are going, well, that means the people at McDonald's will be making $28 an hour. Yes. And what's wrong with that? Because what a lot of people don't understand is, as their wages will increase, so will yours. Because again, the business is a competitive ass market, and businesses are realizing, especially there in Florida, Florida's a prime example of employers and employees are realizing their worth. And and not to quote A Bug's Life, but if everybody rose up, they would suddenly realize they outnumber the employers. And that would be a very scary situation for the employers. But child labor laws, again, are being relaxed by GOPs across the states. And you should be very concerned, because instead of raising minimum wage, instead of raising income, they would rather get the next generation and say, yeah, you can work a few more hours, no problem. And where in that case, they're just trying to keep the profits high, no matter who's working the French fry counter. And that alone is fucking scary. But we're going to move on to our feel-good story, guys, because usually how the fact we got here, we do cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom, sometimes make use of faith in humanity. But hey, it's Wednesday, it's hump day, and therefore we got to get you guys over the hump to our pre-Friday, which will be Thursday. And hopefully this story right here will definitely give you guys some good vibes, because again, I love these stories where there's a positivity out of tragedy.
Let's celebrate Shima Nixon.
This is what strength and determination look like.
We did it. We made it.
That's 31-year-old Shima Nixon,
Shima Nixon.
graduating with a master's degree on Friday from Alabama State University.
Oh, I love y'all.
It's a dream come true that almost didn't happen.
This guy hit me and pinned me in between my car and his car. The next thing I remember is waking up in the hospital and not being able to move anything from the waist down.
Shima was studying to be a nurse in 2013 when the accident happened. She lost both her legs.
I remember okay, this is how life is going to be now. So I just have to roll with the punches.
It took too long. I'm going to try again.
During the crucial months that followed, she found strength in faith and family,
as he inspires them.
but also in new friends like a mentor named Stephen Shope, a bilateral amputee working with Hanger Clinic, a company providing custom care, support, and solutions for people with physical challenges.
Oh my gosh, Stephen, when he came into my room, it was just like, girl, like, you got this. So at that moment, I was like, I'm not the only amputee in the world.
Meeting someone with similar challenges put Shima on a life-changing path, giving her the courage to push through the pain. She finished college and graduate school, focusing on a degree in prosthetics and orthotics. And inspired by other clinicians of color, she's now starting a residency at Hanger Clinic, determined to make a difference for other amputees.
I want them to know that although they may have a different ability, look at this Black girl from the small country town that lost both of her legs, and see how far she's come, see how far she's grown.
Using her journey to now inspire others, one step at a time.
And again, I just thought that was pretty cool, just because that was, to take something that was that tragic and really take a positivity out of it. There really is no way I could say that, because that's one of those things where you love to see it. And congratulations to her, because again, we are in the graduation season for high schools and colleges. So for all those that are graduating, whether in high school, whether in college, bravo and hats off to you, because trust me, I know how it feels, because man, you at that point, you just done. Although if you do got a bachelor's degree, give yourself a second about the master's. And if you got a master's degree, give yourself a second about the PhD. That's all I'm saying. If you want to, take a break. Just saying. But that's going to do it for this podcast, guys. Need to go off live for all. Thank you guys that was terrible. Thank you all for liking, watching, sharing, letting people know this is live. I certainly appreciate it. Some shameless plugging before we get out of here, guys. Always shout out to my friends that support me. Big Bond, Big BZA Dot on all social media. You can definitely check him out and his YouTube music channel, where there is music for free that he will not ban you on like most people do on YouTube. If there's music that you're interested in purchasing that you hear, definitely reach out to him and he will definitely get to you about that. But definitely check him out, Big BZA Dot on all social media. As for myself, guys, Black Fox 447 on all social media. You can find me just about everywhere. I usually do reviews on everything that I play, that I read, that I see. Even gym stuff, because I need to get back to getting into the gym and getting back myself to a shape. But I do miss it. Although I'm not complaining right now. Being a dad is definitely a life-changing experience with my son. If you follow me on social media, you know I post him every chance I get. But I digress. But again, guys, let me link at the bottom and make that a little bit bigger for you guys, so you guys can see that. If you copy and paste that link into your browser, taking my link through, that's YouTube and Facebook groups for all of my podcasts. How the Frack We Got Here, Get Bit, and of course the Offense Podcast. Definitely like, definitely share, definitely subscribe. Let me know what you guys think about everything we talked about. I want to keep the conversation going. At the same time, guys, even though COVID has sort of relaxed, we still want to be careful, because again, we are reaching we're going from spring very close to the summer, and then from summer to fall. This year of 2023 seems to be going through very quickly as the time goes by. But again, protect yourselves, protect each other. At the same time, support each other. If someone's doing something, and that's the thing I'm really big on right now, is of support. Unify, share what somebody's doing, support them, even if it's not monetary. Just letting people know about word of mouth or things that's going on. Just do that. Get back to actually helping each other and actually growing and linking businesses and things of that nature, because you never know where the next break may come from, and it may just came from through you. And if that doesn't make you feel great about seeing someone succeed, I think something's very wrong with you. Aside from that, guys, last thing I'll say about how the Frack We Got Here, it's all about really just staying informed. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are simply just giving you all the information, allow you to make up your own mind, but we do provide a lot of perspective that goes along with it. We do a lot better in society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now that we should have done back then, like electing our first Black woman Supreme Court, electing our first Black woman to the Federal Board of Governors, electing our first Black woman to the National Cybersecurity Director, electing our first Black 4-star military general. All great things. When we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. That's why we keep asking ourselves, why does everything go up by our paycheck? Why are we electing different politicians but still the same old game in Congress? And most importantly, how the frack we got here. Thank you all for watching, guys. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we will all get through this. Peace.